Hello again. And again, I'm Brian Schaefer, a scholar in residence here, and it is such an honor to be joined by Taylor Stanley. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And thank you all for joining us as well. Thank you for a beautiful performance. I'm excited to talk about it with you. I'm gonna ask Taylor some questions. We'll chat a little bit, and then I'll open for some questions from the audience as well. So if you have anything you'd like to ask Taylor, to ask about the performance tonight, get your questions ready. We talked a little bit last week about the fact that this was going to take place outdoors. And, initially this was going to be in the Duke, and then it was transferred, and there was something kind of special and unique, and you called it even a blessing to be able to do this out in nature. We weren't there tonight, but I feel like nature was here anyway. And I feel like we really experienced that. And there were some really beautiful moments when the rain felt like it was really responding to the dance. There was also another beautiful moment where in Jody's piece, there was some recorded thunder that responded to the actual thunder. So I feel like it's still fair to ask you about performing in nature and kind of what that felt like and how that has, now that you're actually at the Pillow in the space, performing yesterday on stage, performing tonight, with this beautiful storm, how that is infiltrating the dance and how you're feeling about it.
Great question. Hi, everyone. Yes, I like you said, I really felt like nature was here with us in a very similar way to how it felt being outside yesterday. I think being in an intimate space like a studio, which, in this kind of environment feels, it's different than like what it feels like as a performance on an actual stage. But I think the intimacy of being in a studio, even with trees peering through the glass and the rain falling on the windows, it's like ridiculously beautiful. And at the same time, it was cozier today, I felt, and different from yesterday too, because we opened the show yesterday. Opening night was last night, and just there were a lot of nerves and anticipations and anxieties and excitement. So I think today having some rain to kind of cleanse the heightened sense of performing yesterday was really I'm grateful for that experience. It was really lovely, and I think all of the dancers responded to the shift in weather pattern tonight. So it's really cool.
It's the beauty of the Pillow is that, it's always going to be with us in some way. Can you share with us a little bit about the journey of how we got to this week and Dichotomous being here? Pam shared with us at the, in her introduction that the conversation started in 2019, and now we're 3 years later. And what was your journey of putting together this program, being here, and in terms of embarking on this adventure, what did you want to learn from it and what did you want to share with us?
It's definitely been a long journey since 2019. Pam mentioning speaking over the phone March of that year and offering this, project and asking, do you want to, we would love for you to express something that we see in your dancing. I feel like there's been this intrigue into how I perceive movement and how I interpret movement, and I've always kind of wanted to curate something like this. Like, I remember the exact moment at which I kind of began daydreaming about this happening someday, and it is surreal to be here like at this Q&A talking about it in real life, in real time. So, and I think I put in the program like this project is a manifestation, like in and of itself. And I feel like since that initial daydream to now, it's like, it's so affirming to see this come to life. And like to have people come and want to witness it and share in it with me. And in terms of process, I think I mean, I never had experience putting on a show or like producing something like this. I've always been on the other side, like being asked to interpret movement so that we as dancers in New York City Ballet can just slide right in where we're supposed to, where it's familiar for us to just fit in. And I think after 12 something years, you know, at New York City Ballet, this project has challenged a lot of those like familiarities of what it means to be a dancer for me. I think a lot of this project has been about not removing, but deviating sort of from that familiarity of ballet dancer at New York City Ballet and incorporating a lot of the research that I've done outside of the ballet on my own, and with this show, like finding a way to invite all of those different avenues of dance that have enriched my own experience at the ballet. So definitely like a push and pull of like what's been, what I've become like attached to in a sense, and also what I'm trying to scratch at and expose. The last piece is called Redness, and Shamel, the choreographer for that solo, named it this because of, you know, the redness underneath the skin, and how when you pull at the skin, it changes color, it shifts its tone. And I feel like a lot of what that solo and what this whole program is about is like getting under those layers of skin and muscle and tissue and exposing myself to my own curiosities and my own desires, and finding like affirmation through all of those, down all those like different pathways. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I definitely want to talk more about Shamel's work, but we'll start at the beginning. And initially it wasn't supposed to be a square dance, but that was kind of a last minute substitution, but I think actually really nice because it felt like you were talking about kind of the, you know, what you're bringing from, you know, your 12 years at New York City Ballet. It felt like a bridge into the rest of the program. And I'm also curious how through this process and putting that work kind of in context and in conversation with all the other discovery that you've been doing, did it feel different doing it here? Is there something that you have brought to it from the other experiences that it feels different now in your body, or that you approach it or think about it, even Balanchine, kind of in a different way?
Yeah, totally. I think slotting square dance in felt like the most relieving piece to insert, because it was something it was like one of my first principal roles at New York City Ballet, and something I continued like getting the chance to do over the years. So I feel like I've definitely gained a lot of information and experience getting to perform that ballet. And that solo usually comes like after a whole lot of dancing. So by that point in the ballet, I'm usually pretty exhausted and trying to wrap my mind around being calm and being able to like finish the ballet strong. Since this opened the show, I have a little bit more energy, a lot more energy. But I think having that, I think I also try to put myself in a state of calm because the solo is so smooth and quiet and elegant and inquisitive. So I think performing square dance here at Jacob's Pillow invites like an expansion of that calmness, where I don't have to stretch or bend as much as I would on stage at City Ballet, but I feel like the intimacy of both being outside and being inside allows me to kind of like have the same amount of effort, but like dial the volume down a little bit in terms of like intensity. So yeah, it feels like a good fit, and I like the through line now where it's like ballet contrasting so much with like what's happening at the end, but both say similar things to me. So.
And then the next work is Andrea Miller's work. It's adapted from Sky to Hold, which premiered last fall at the New York City Ballet Fall Fashion Gala. The adapted excerpt is called Mango. And I want to kind of pair that a little bit with Jodi's work, These Five, just because they're the ensemble works. And it was wonderful to see you with these dancers and also kind of a new group of dancers. And it kind of made me think about the way that being in New York City Ballet is kind of a family that you're born into. And with these two works, these were a chosen family that you assembled. And so I'm curious if you could just share with us kind of the dancers that you wanted to bring into this process with you and share the stage with, and how you built this community.
Yeah, I mean, I feel exactly that way about, these dancers being chosen family, because each one of them I've both crossed paths with in my outside exploration, and also have built something foundational with each and every one of them through those outside experiences, and also through, especially through coming here and rehearsing these ensemble works. With Sky to Hold, or Mango, sort of like this condensed and extracted version of Andrea Miller's bigger work that happened last fall. With that piece, I wanted to just like hold on to the essence of something like raw and like fruity. It feels like, I mean, mango obviously, but what drew me to Andrea's style and her like mission with movement was just the like freedom and liberation that comes with like architecture. She talks a lot about architecture in the body and how like you can shapeshift through those different structures. And I think how this group formed, each one of them I've just crossed paths with in some kind of way that has been meaningful to me. Sebastian, who was in the piece, Villarini Velez, he is a colleague from New York City Ballet. Ashton Edwards is a dancer with Pacific Northwest Ballet, who I was just so interested in, and just like I felt like our hearts connected from like opposite sides of the country. And then Nuhum, I got to work with through Andrea, through this big installation piece she created at Lincoln Center last summer. So just having people in different pockets of experience is what really interested me, curating this group. And Jodi's piece feels the same. Semyon Barber, I worked with Christopher Williams dance. We just did a show at the Joyce Theater. Ned Sturgis, longtime friend, and someone I wanted to dance with, and could see, you know, his intrigue and movement. Allison Hooks was a former dancer with Galeem, Andrea Miller's company, and Marcella Lewis came to assist Kyle Abraham on The Runaway, which was choreographed back in 2018 at New York City Ballet. So, yeah, everyone just has a very like powerful place in like my heart and in my body and my soul, and yeah, it just feels like a real chosen family, a chosen support system, and I feel so supported by each and every one of them. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. Mourner's Bench by Tali Beatty, which was performed here in 1948 and was just extraordinary to see back, kind of resurrected here. And you worked with Kim Bears Bailey, of Philadelphia, who kind of set this, and who you shared with me that she really, really made an effort to bring Tali Beatty kind of into the room, into the space, to bring that kind of spirit into the process. And I'm curious just what that looked like and felt like, and then how you kind of carry that into the performance here. You know, we noticed kind of how you gesture to the bench, and it feels like an homage to him, to everything. So if you could just share a little bit about kind of what's going through you in that, you know, for that dance.
Sure, yeah. Well, in choosing an archival solo, I really felt it was important for me to just connect to my roots and my heritage, and I think something that can get lost in like my normal place of work, and something I've, you know, always been researching and trying to understand more and more. And with Mourner's Bench, you know, Norton from the archives helped me choose this solo, and once we kind of sat with it, it just like landed. And Kim Bears from Philadelphia came up one Saturday to New York. She brought a bench with her. She like drove a bench that she had at Philadelphia in her car. She parked it outside of like the ABT studios, and we like hauled the bench up 5 flights of stairs because the freight elevator wasn't working, and we're just like sweating. It's so hot out, but like she also just felt like one of my aunts, like just so full of life and laughter and love and passion and character, and I just felt so safe with her immediately, like she was a part of my family and me hers. So establishing that connection and going into rehearsal just made for such a fruitful day. And I learned that solo in a day. We had like a 6-hour time slot, and then I had to go dance at the Joyce that night, and so it was like a very like tiring day, but you know, I think her mission was to bring Tali into the studio with her, because she was and still is like a student of his, and you could just feel in her energy how meaningful and how much she needs his presence in order to, you know, function efficiently and teach this solo efficiently in the studio. So yeah, it was very, very meaningful experience with Kim. I really treasured it, and yeah, it was like a family member teaching me this really amazing solo that has so much historic attachment to the pillow itself. And I think that in itself, getting to dance that here during the 90th anniversary season, like, is so surreal. And I'm kind of like, what? Like, why me? Like, but at the same time, it's affirming to dance that solo and just be in the presence of Tally. And I feel like that's why also, it's like because of him, this bench exists and it's here and I feel so connected to it. And yeah.
Yeah, well, it's such a treat for us. So thank you for bringing that to us. And last, I want to ask you about Shamel's work about redness and specifically about Gaga. I know that that's a movement language that has meant a lot to you. I think when I first met you and spoke with you maybe 7 or so years ago, you were already into Gaga. You were already looking at it, studying it. I know you've been to Tel Aviv to kind of further your studies with it. Tell us a little bit about what that means to you and how it's influenced your dancing, and also what it meant to work with Shamel, who is in Batsheva, who comes from the the birthplace of Gaga, and it's so in his body, to be able to speak that shared language together and to be able to bring it in that piece.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a big part of why like dichotomous, the word dichotomous came to mind was stems part from just always having this sense of otherness, like kind of coursing through my brain and my body, and while New York City Ballet has given me so much and has really like allowed me to, especially more recently, allowed me to just express and expand in ways that I really feel I'd like to do so deep down. I think when we first met and started speaking about Gaga, I was conflicted about myself as a dancer. I wanted to break out of something. And it wasn't totally ballet, but it wasn't completely like giving myself over to like a contemporary space. I think I just had the desire to like mold these two worlds that I have such an affinity for. And I first met Shamel at a Netherlands Dance Theater summer intensive back in 2014 or 15. He was the Gaga teacher for the summer intensive. And that was my first kind of introduction to Gaga. And I remember it being like so hard, like moving for an hour nonstop and just accessing complete exhaustion, but also feeling so alive and tingly. And, that all really intrigued me. And then I continued taking his classes back in New York, in Brooklyn at Mark Morris. And I kind of officially introduced myself to him there. And, he's always kind of just been on my radar, whether watching him perform in Batsheva when he was dancing there, or, just crossing paths in, as we do in the dance world. And I think the opportunity to work with him was so enriching and spiritual. We were here last November when like the leaves were falling and everything was red and orange and all the colors were just gorgeous. And my dog Theo was here, and like the first section of that solo is like kind of influenced by him. He's a 10-year-old Shiba Inu and is very stoic and kind of inquisitive. Like he's just like me, but also kind of like, I need space and I need boundaries, and I may not know how to express those like to the best of my ability, but as long as I'm continuing in that process of like learning how to do that, I feel like that's kind of how I sense my dog, and also like how that section of the solo feels. But that solo is actually split up in 3 parts. Starts with Theo, sort of this slow processing, exploring the space, looking around, and then it goes into what we call ablutions, which is just like kind of the scratches come in, and then it builds into this like wanting to get stuff off of you, off of, my skin, and just like it kind of speaks to frustration, the frustration of like being an artist, which is very like maybe cliche and out there, but it's also very true. So just the kind of wiping things away and trying to come up for air. And then the last section, when I'm kind of giving myself up to nature and to the space, that's called the clearing. So in developing this solo, I said to Shamel, like, I really am craving this experience of going through kind of all the things that I go through in my head, and the self-doubt and the criticism, but there's lightness in there too. And I think that solo really speaks to my trajectory as a person. And it feels awesome, and it feels tiring, and it feels like I'm still questioning things, which I feel like Shamel really like nailed the assignment. So yeah, it's kind of my thoughts on redness.
Well, thank you for sharing all that here, and also for sharing that in the dance. Taylor Stanley, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you all as well.
Thank you.